Good morning, everyone. Waiting for everyone to come into the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our second Pathways to Success interview. Our goal for this series is to introduce our student life and engagement team members to various leaders and allowing the leaders to share their pearls of wisdom with us about their journey, how they got to be where they are, who they are. And I kind of feel like it's like having coffee. So it feels like we're going to just have coffee with Bob Patterson this morning, who serves as our Chief Financial Officer for Student Life and Engagement. And as I've said before, the goal of this series is just exposure and for us to learn from our leaders. Who have been successful. So you may or may not want to be a CFO, but there's a lot that you can learn from our leaders who have achieved the status that they have. And Bob's had a lot of success. And so I look forward to talking with him. And I'm really grateful that we get the opportunity to talk with him and his talk about his career with him before he heads out for retirement, a well-earned retirement. So good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Kelly. It's delightful to be here, and I'm glad I'm able to have coffee with everyone and to visit with you folks. This is great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving up your time, Bob. We'll go ahead and get started. For everyone, I do have some prepared questions that I've given Bob ahead of time so he can give some thoughtful answers. We will have Kathy monitoring the chat. So as you have questions about what Bob may be sharing in response to the prepared questions, or you may just have a different question that we didn't address, feel free to put that in the chat and we will be sure to ask Bob before we wrap up this morning. We've allotted an hour, but we will go for as long as we need to, up to an hour, right, Bob? So Bob's giving us an hour of his time. So Bob, if you could start off by telling us who you are personally. Who is Bob? So only what you feel comfortable sharing, but just kind of what would you like people to know about you as Bob Patterson?
Yeah, Kelly, thank you very much. Uh, Terrific opportunity to meet with you folks and to discuss my career and some of my pathways in my journey for both personally and vocationally. Grew up here in Lansing, Michigan. My dad was a civil engineer with MDOT. My mom was a stay-at-home mom who also was a nurse at Sparrow Hospital. So grew up in Lansing and attended Lansing Public Schools. Graduated from Lansing Sexton way back in '78. Of course, I attended junior high school at Dwight Rich with Irvin Magic Johnson. So that was one of my classmates back then. So he would probably be a better Pathways to Success interview than me, but we've gone in slightly different career paths. But interesting as you grow up to see where people go and move on to different career things. So that was kind of an anecdotal story. Um, Boy, just was a Lansing kid. After graduation, worked at carrying the State Journal newspaper for many years. That was my first job at age 12. I carried the Lansing State Journal 7 days a week, and that was my first job at age 12. After that, I started working at a bicycle shop, repairing bikes and putting new ones together. And then after that, went on in 1976 to McDonald's on South MLK, where I started at $1.90 an hour. Very happy to make that great minimum wage working at McDonald's in '76. So it just tells you how wages and finances and things like that have changed, although I think a lot of the work probably at McDonald's is still about the same. Was engaged in band and a few sports at Sexton, played saxophone growing up. And then after high school, applied to colleges and settled on Michigan State. Wasn't really sure what I was going to study, so I came into Michigan State as no preference. I enjoyed STEM, I enjoyed sports and things like that, so really didn't know what I wanted to do, so I thought I would try different things. So as I got into my Michigan State career and some of my classes there, I started to get an interest in business. And then at orientation one time where folks signed up for classes, they said, well, accounting's a pretty good area. There's pretty good job skills. And of course, growing up in the 70s here in Lansing, we went through a couple of tough recessions and things, and jobs
Mhm.
were hard to come by. I remember, unlike now, I went to the McDonald's desk and begged for a job every single day to the manager. It took me a couple months to get in. So the job situation back then was very different than it is now. So I got thinking career-wise, what would I like to do? And some of my first aspirational ideas for vocations is I was interested in architecture. So I wanted to go perhaps to University of Michigan and study architecture. They had a good program there. And then a good friend of mine who was a few years older, again, during one of the recession periods back then, did graduate from U of M in architecture and could not find a job. So the job situation was very tough during the recessions of the 70s. So I said,
Mhm.
maybe that's not such a great way to go. So I ended up at Michigan State, ended up majoring in accounting, and turned out to be a pretty good fit. But one of the ways that I helped pay my way through college was I worked graveyards over at Sparrow Hospital as a pharmacy technician. So I would go to classes during the day and then start work at Sparrow Pharmacy at about 11 p.m. at night, and I would fill, the prescriptions for the patients and mix IVs and things like that. And enjoyed pharmacy quite a bit too. So I thought, well, maybe pharmacy is a good way to go. That would be a good area. And I worked with a lot of pharmacists there. But sadly, Michigan State didn't have a pharmacy program. I would either have to go to Ferris, which is really good, or perhaps to U of M for pharmacy and then quit MSU. So I thought, well, I really don't want to quit school. So I guess I'll stick with business. And then I was able, a couple years later, to transfer over to Sparrow's accounting department, have an internship there. And that's where I started really getting interested in healthcare finance. I really enjoyed the hospital setting. I really enjoyed business and accounting and finance. And then I said, maybe healthcare finance is an area for me. So continued on at Michigan State through graduation and continued working at Sparrow there. And then in accounting, started to apply and look for positions after graduation with public accounting firms, especially those that audited hospitals. I thought that would be a good fit. So that's kind of my upbringing here. Currently, I've been in Lansing for most of my adult life. Lived in Delta Township near the Lansing Mall in our one and only house for about 36 years and been happily married to my wife, Mimi, for that long. Got our house in 88 and got married the same year. And we have two lovely daughters, Kristen and Kelly, who both went to Waverly schools and both are graduates of Michigan State. Kelly was mechanical engineering. She lives with her husband in Detroit. And Kristen actually works at Michigan State. She was an accounting major here and is also a CPA, following in my footsteps, and works in the finance and planning office here on campus, and they live in Grand Ledge. So kids are both in the state of Michigan, which is nice, and doing very well. So no grandkids yet, but one grand dog and two grand cats. So that's kind of my story here. So involved in the community, do lots of volunteering, either at church or with nonprofit boards and things like that, and been involved in those areas too. So that's kind of my background. For my avocations, boy, I love sports, love MSU sports and participating. Uh, I like to golf and sail and ski and everything. And when I started working at Michigan State here in 91, I was an avid water skier. So I became the staff advisor for the MSU Water Ski Club. And so, of course, they still are RSO today on the Grand River in Lansing, where the crew rows and had a great time for a dozen years being the staff advisor for the water ski club. So they taught me how to be a good skier, and that was a lot of fun too. But then as my
Yeah.
kids got older, I didn't have quite the time to do everything. So that's kind of my background. And once I did finish out for Michigan State, then entered public accounting and then studied for the CPA exam, passed that, and then actually got my CPA license for the state of Michigan. So that's kind of my background.
Bob, that's a wide variety of things. You're truly a jack of many trades.
Yeah,
There,
master of none.
since the age of 12. Wow. Well, just a wide variety of things. So very well-rounded, and a very strong work ethic that we clearly see to this day. And I know you're very proud of your family, your wife and your two girls. So No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. So you started going down the pathway of your decision making, right, for your major and you finding what you enjoy doing, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about your professional journey
Yeah.
and where you are now?
Yeah. When I graduated from Michigan State in summer of '82, I wanted to get into public accounting. I wanted to become a CPA because I thought for all of that educational training I've got, that would be a good certification to have and give me a wide skill set from which to go in different directions. So I started working for a public accounting firm called Price Waterhouse Coopers in Detroit. Our office was in the Renaissance Center right downtown and started working there in '82, took the CPA exam, passed that, got my requisite couple of years of experience, and then did get my state of Michigan CPA license. Worked on a lot of clients there on the audit side of things in public accounting. Ford Motor Company used to audit them, but my main passion was healthcare finance. And so they were able to put me on a lot of hospital audits and healthcare areas and things like that. So spent a lot of time with third-party reimbursement and healthcare audits and so forth, and really enjoyed my time at PricewaterhouseCoopers in Detroit. Traveled around auditing different hospitals and corporations. And after a couple, 3 years there, one of my clients, which was actually Sisters of Mercy Health Corporation out of Farmington Hills, had one of their hospitals in Lansing, St. Lawrence Hospital. And I was involved in that audit too. They finally had an opening for a director of budget and internal audit and asked if I would apply. So after several years in public accounting, I took a job with St. Lawrence Hospital here in Lansing as their budget and internal audit director. And so worked there for many, many years, and again in healthcare finance at St. Lawrence, and really enjoyed that. And so that was a good area to work in both in started my career kind of in the service industry too, because hospitals are pretty similar to SLE, serving students, customers, and guests, because like SLE, we have basically housing and dining at a hospital, only with much more in-depth care and procedures and things like that. But we still house and feed our patients, much like we house and feed our students here. So that kind of got my feet wet a little bit with the service industry, which I enjoyed. So after about 6 or 7 years there at St. Lawrence, I had some contacts there in pathology there with our lab. And Dr. Harold Bowman also was one of the professors here at MSU Pathology. And so they had an opening for a business manager at MSU in 1991. And so they encouraged me to apply, and that was my transition from St. Lawrence to MSU. So my first stint at Michigan State was the business manager for the pathology department, and that was over in Fee Hall. So I worked on 6th East Fee, and we also had labs in the clinical center and the life science building. So worked a lot there, and again, kind of in the healthcare finance area for pathology. So that was my first chance getting my feet wet with all things higher education in Michigan State in an academic department that also did a lot of service. We actually were part of 3 medical schools. We were human med, osteomed, and veterinary med. So I was able to work with all 3 schools and also the veterinary pathologists that we had there too. So that was a good opportunity. We had a clinical lab over at the clinical center where we drew blood and did a lot of the lab processing and work there. So I got good experience with that and just furthered my breadth of knowledge for healthcare finance in pathology. At the same time, started to figure out what higher ed was like in terms of the financing, staffing, and operation of a large university like Michigan State, even though we were just one small department of pathology over in Fee. So I was there for many years, and then also worked with the MSU Health team as kind of the business manager there. Worked with Bill Beekman and several folks there as the health team started to grow and become more involved on the clinical side. So again, still in healthcare all the way up through the mid 90s at MSU. After that, in the mid 90s, there were some more opportunities available and some more openings in the controller's office. So I decided to apply for a job as a financial analyst supervisor in the controller's office in the mid-90s. Came over here and did cost accounting, worked on putting the university's financial statements together, got the annual audit done with them. Currently, Plant Moran, a local CPA firm, does the audit for Michigan State. So worked a lot in preparing the financials and getting those audited as well by Plant Moran. I was in charge of the travel program here, so all things travel. So learned a lot about the hospitality industry through travel as well, which is quite similar in serving people with travel. And uh, learned a lot about that industry too. It's quite ironic that we just celebrated the 23rd anniversary of 9/11 yesterday, and I was in charge of our travel program on Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001, when
Mhm.
we watched on TV during our department head meeting of the towers in New York getting hit.
Yeah.
And at the time, we had 24 Michigan State University employees in the air traveling at the same time. And so we were very concerned about Michigan State employees and their whereabouts. At that time, Provost Simon, who later became on to be our president, was in California also. So she was in flight there, and we had lots and lots of our faculty and staff traveling as we do today. And we were trying like crazy to work with our travel agencies and find out if they were safe, where they were going, and where they were at. And
Mhm.
so we had to really scramble with our travel agencies to look up itineraries and see if they were safe, see if they were on the four planes that were involved in the 9/11 attacks. Fortunately, they were not involved, but then we had MSU employees stranded all over the country because all air travel stopped, and we had literally hundreds and hundreds of MSU business travelers in all corners of the world, and we couldn't get them home. So it was an interesting wait there. Dr. Simon was stuck in California for another 10 days. Other people got together and rented cars and vehicles and did anything they could to try to get back as all air travel in the US stopped. So kind of interesting how we celebrated that anniversary yesterday, and I was very busy that time with our travel program. Stayed with the controller's office for several years and worked on the financials. Was very happy there. Met some great mentors there, some terrific people I was able to work with. And I was just a sponge at looking at their leadership styles and skills and things like that. Some of my heroes back in the controller's office were Steve Terry and Roger Wilkinson, our vice president for finance, Glenn Klein, Dave Brower, and just learned a tremendous amount about their management styles, their vocational skills, and work ethics. So they were some of my early mentors in the controller's office that were just invaluable to work with. Worked with Phyllis Sherwood back there. She was in our payroll area, so got to meet some of the folks that were in, of course, then housing and dining. And then when Dick Sigelko started his retirement plans at the end of 2007, that's when Guy Procopio and Phyllis Sherwood encouraged me to apply for the CFO job here in SLE. And I told them, no, thanks. I'm very happy where I'm at. Forget it. And so I blew them off, and they kept after me, kept after me, kept after me. Said, Bob, at least apply, just put a resume together. I said, well, all right, I'll apply, but I'm not interested. I'm happy where I'm at. So begrudgingly, I applied. Begrudgingly, I put a resume together, and begrudgingly, they called me up, and Martin Mittermeier brought me over for an interview. And one thing led to another, and sure enough, they sold me on that. And so begrudgingly, I accepted the CFO job to a brand new MSU employee by the name of Vinnie Gore, who was just straight out of University of Washington and very new to MSU. So it was a leap of faith for me reporting to someone I didn't know about and had never really even met him until my first interview with him. So a little bit of a leap of faith there for this position now, but of course, certainly turned out to be really good. And I'm very happy I did that. And it's been a tremendous opportunity here. I was in the controller's office 12 years and now almost 17 years here in SLE. So a great learning experience, again, more in the hospitality industry, less in financial analysis and financial reporting. But it's been a real blessing and a great opportunity, again, to be back in the service industry, working with our students, customers, and guests. So that's been really helpful to round that out and really continued my passion for the education that we're doing here at Michigan State, and to see our young people graduate and see them go on to great things, and including my daughters and lots of kids of friends and things like that. So it's been mission-wise just tremendous, very rewarding to work here and to see the growth from our students going from high school graduation all the way through college, living with us, interns, study abroads, and finally commencement here at Michigan State. So that's kind of my professional journey leading up to now. I just celebrated my 42nd work anniversary a couple days ago. So it's interesting that it also fell this week, but been working for 42 years, and kind of running out of gas in the tank a little bit. So looking to pass the baton. I view this as a relay race, and I want to make sure, as Dick Sigelco successfully passed the baton to me for the CFO role here at SLE, that I do the same with Brett Hunkins, who we just hired last month to be our next CFO. And I want to make sure that I successfully pass the baton to Brett, don't drop it on my leg, and make sure that he's able to carry on for the next leg and to continue the good things that we've got going here at SLE. So Brett's doing very well. He's a quick study, and so far he has also been a sponge in picking up a lot of the financial nuances and some of the reporting things here. So he's doing a terrific job, and I have every confidence that he will be very good going forward as I phase out here toward the end of this month.
That's fantastic, Bob. You said so much in all of that, in talking about your 42-year career, and some things that you faced. And I know we have some planned questions, but I have to ask some follow-up questions to some
Yep.
of the things that you said, and I had to take some notes here. One, I do want to say, yes, you have run your leg of the relay race very well. And we also thank you because you plan to retire much earlier than October. But because you wanted to pass on the baton and help the new CFO be successful, you extended that. And so we appreciate that very much. And we don't take that for granted. So, because you could have just said, I'm out of here. I'm retiring, but you care. And so, and I think we've heard that in your two responses so far. I think your management of the 9/11 crisis was significant, Bob. I didn't know about that. And so I think about, you having to rely on things. And that was many years ago, right? We didn't have the robust social media, right, that we have now, right, for people to be able to check in and tweet and know what's going on and those types of things. And so how did you kind of keep a level head and manage in that crisis? What were some of your lessons learned there as a leader and kind of overseeing that, especially in the travel office?
One thing we had that really helped is we, back in the late 90s, started a travel program with 3 dedicated travel agencies. And we worked to come up and leverage good airline deals at the time with Northwest Airline, National Car Rental, things like that, through our 3 travel agencies: Spartan Travel, Anderson Travel, and STA Travel. And since we had direct billing of airfare, most of our faculty and staff booked their airfare through our 3 agencies so they could direct bill it to their account number.
Mhm.
That gave us good information on segments flown for negotiating with airlines, but it also gave us the ability to go through all the MSU travelers and check itineraries at any given time for people's travel plans. So we could go back and check with their airline reservations and find out on that Tuesday who was traveling that day, who was in the air that day, and actually where they were going, because our travel agents were able to check their ticketing and find out what airlines they were on, and also find out where they were going. Now, of course, if
Mhm.
you harken back to 9/11, only 2 airlines were involved in 9/11. That was American and United.
Yeah.
Fortunately, most of our travelers were Northwest and Delta flyers back then. That's when Northwest was the major carrier of Detroit. So most of our business and air was on Northwest. And so luckily we did not have too many people flying American or United, especially that day. Especially all of these flights originated out of the East Coast. So our travelers would have had to have left from Portland, Maine, Newark, places like that, which is would only be for a return trip. And so fortunately, we didn't have anybody on the 4 planes, although we did have lots of people in the air, and it took us several days to figure out if we had anybody involved in that, because there was so much confusion And with all the airports being closed then, it created a giant difficult situation on where everybody was at and how to get them home because nothing was flying for about a week or so. So the travel agencies and our partners really helped to identify where everybody was and if everybody was safe.
Mm, awesome. So you also talked about your mentors and you named them. Did you formally ask them to serve as your mentors? And if so, how did that go about? And then if not, you said no. You talked about being a sponge. How did you go about learning from them?
These are my financial heroes here at Michigan State, and I just observed and became a sponge of their leadership styles and characteristics. Roger Wilkinson's story was great. He was our longstanding vice president for finance. And back in the day, back in the 60s and things like that, John Hanna was the president here for a long, long time. And, MSU was quite a bit smaller. And so he made a lot of decisions. So I remember one great story. Roger was a CPA, a hardworking, up and coming accountant. And one day, John Hanna, our president, walked into his office and pointed at Roger and says, "You're effective now, the vice president for finance and treasurer at Michigan State University." And then Hannah walked out and left him there. And Roger says he went home and threw up. So after that, he
I
became
bet.
a hero and he was thrust into that situation and ended up serving for decades. Steve Terry was vice president for finance, smartest guy in the room. He knew so much about this institution and his breadth of knowledge was incredible. So I just tried to watch and learn as much as I could from Steve. Glenn Klein also was in financial analysis with us, a fellow CPA. I watched his work ethic. It'd be 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning during busy season in August with the financials, and quietly you'd be in here, and there's Glenn working away at 7 a.m. on a Sunday, putting the financials together to meet our deadlines and things, and was very humble and no fanfare. But when I observe things like that, and I see how they manage people, and to see their not only work ethic but people skills, I wanted to be like that. And so I didn't have formal mentors per se, but I sure did watch and I sure did learn and listen. And also, there's a lot of people at Michigan State that were anti-mentors and role models and people that I wanted to have nothing to do with, including some of my early directors and leaders in pathology, which I thought their people skills were horrid. And I'm certain that they failed kindergarten because they were brilliant MD PhDs, but they didn't get along with people. They had no interpersonal skills. They were toxic and abrasive. They treated our secretarial staff horribly, and they were just mean people, even though academically they were brilliant. And I learned a lot about that too, that even though you might have lots of academic credentials, it doesn't mean that you passed kindergarten with how to get along with people and common sense. So observing and being a sponge on some poor management styles helped me too on what I didn't want to become.
Hmm. No, that's a really good point. You can learn what you don't want to be and what you don't want to do. Right. Absolutely. And my last follow-up question is, you said you made the switch out of healthcare, right? At some point. You're still at MSU, but you switched out. So what was your approach? What was your mindset when you kind of made that switch? What, for someone who's thinking about doing that or has to do that for whatever reason, what tips would you offer them in kind of moving from one area to the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I worked more and more in healthcare finance, the light at the end of my tunnel became the train. And I was very disillusioned as I worked for St. Lawrence and things and third-party reimbursement declines in that. So primarily Medicare and Medicaid. And with the fiscal and the governmental budget crunches and recessions back in the 70s and 80s, reimbursement to hospitals and to nursing homes started to decline from Medicare and Medicaid. So for doing the same service, you got paid less each year, and that was putting the hospitals in a real bind. Also, emergency rooms is where 90% of your bad debts come through because at St. Lawrence, we had a mission to serve everybody. But quite often in the ER, a lot of the bad debts arise from there too. So even though we were working just as hard, seeing as many patients, our reimbursement was going down. And I became disillusioned with the trend for Medicare and Medicaid to keep paying less. when I ran the nursing home at St. Lawrence Diamondale. If elderly patients become indigent, Medicaid becomes the primary payer in the state of Michigan. And I noticed each year we would still take care of our nursing home patients, but our per diem reimbursement would become less and less and less as the state of Michigan had budget problems. And so that's one of the things that kind of ended up pushing me out of healthcare finance and then go to the controller's office away from healthcare for the first time in 96.
Yeah. So how was that for you mentally and professionally making that switch?
It was a little disheartening because I had always dreamed of being a vice president for finance at a hospital,
Hmm.
and it was a career change that I knew I never would achieve. And so I had to kind of readjust my goals and things like that and do a different industry, now more of higher education, accounting, and finance.
Hmm. Okay. Thank you, Bob. So you kind of begrudgingly moved over, right? And then again, when you came to HFS, right, at that time to work with Benny. So,
Yes, yes.
well, we're glad you made those jumps, Bob, for sure. So I'll move to the question regarding your leadership philosophy, and how you approach your work and how you exemplify your values in your work. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I think if you would sum up my philosophy for leadership is servant leadership. I try to basically lead by example. I try to, do whatever is needed. Of course, at Michigan State, everybody's job description at the very end and the last line is and other duties as assigned.
Right.
And of course, in pathology, I was moving all kinds of pathological slides and specimens and things like that around. And pretty soon I figured out that my job description was everything. And to serve everybody, whether it's the administrative assistants, professors, and things like that, my job is to be a servant to our students, customers, and guests. And I try to carry that same philosophy on here in accounting, is to be a servant leader. Nothing is beneath me. I'm willing to do debits and credits and grind and do whatever is needed. In a sense of the three words that come through for this is service, humility, and trust. And I
Mm.
try to espouse those values and to not so much to toot my own horn, but to be a shoulder to shoulder worker with our staff and getting things done and kind of lead by example, and nothing is beneath me. So servant leadership is probably the best philosophy that I espouse.
And Bob, I
Communication.
can I can back you up on that one for sure. Bob will jump in and put gloves on and jump in a dish room in a minute and sweat through your clothes, right, Bob?
As we all do, move-in is the
Yes.
same way, unloading trunks and working on move-in and participation and things like that. And there's no
Yes.
better place on campus than to be a servant leader than here in SLE. It is a great opportunity to learn every facet of the business, whether you're picking the range at golf, working at move-in, unloading trunks, doing dishes. You learn so much. I
You
worked in the dish
do.
room at Holmes Hall, and I was the only person speaking English in the entire dish room. And yet it was amazing how everybody worked super effectively as a team in that room, and you could get the job done very effectively with zero verbal communication at all. And I learned a lot by that. And so everywhere you go, as being a sponge for all of these items and things, it's a terrific opportunity to learn the business and work with people, despite
I
their
agree.
differences and backgrounds.
Yep, I agree. Thanks, Bob. You definitely demonstrate that. Now, one of the things that many of our SLE folks ask is, kind of what activities, courses, conferences, certification, professional development that you've done, that you've found to be helpful that perhaps they may find helpful also. What would you share?
Yeah, that's a great, great question. First and foremost, at Michigan State, we are an institution of higher education. So advanced degrees here are very important. I certainly encourage people to be lifelong earners. And with Michigan State's tuition reimbursement and things like that, I actively encourage people, get that bachelor degree, get your MBA. A certification for me was the CPA, Certified Public Accountant license from the state of Michigan. And it is very valuable here at Michigan State. Certainly, you wouldn't be able to apply for the president's job without a PhD or an MD here. And so that terminal degree is a very valuable credential at Michigan State. So I encourage you to be lifelong learners. And the more degrees, study part-time and things like that you can have for picking up a degree. And now it's even easier online. I certainly encourage that because it's good educational background and it'll lead to more career advancement here at Michigan State, an institution that really rewards higher ed degrees and lifelong learning. So that's important. Even within our own department, the compliance training that we have is super important. The stuff that our Joe Petroff and the annual compliance training, Kathy certainly works with that too. That's very valuable too, because for boots on the ground training on how to do your day-to-day job, that's terrific. Uh, there's other groups such as Michigan Housing Association, or what I'm involved with is Big Ten Housing Officers, is a great way to network with your Big Ten peers. So once every October, we get together, rotating around to different schools and meet with all of my peer business officers in housing and dining. It's a great way to network, to share best practices. To have contacts in case you have questions, to compare room and board rates. So I encourage everybody to try to network as much as possible with your other educational peers in the state of Michigan and the Big Ten, and get to meet those folks, get involved. Um, Certainly volunteering locally at nonprofits, whether you're involved in Rotary here for regional areas or in Lansing, nonprofits, things like that is a terrific way to network and also to make those connections to also continue to serve here at SLE. I know the Greater Lansing Visitor and Convention Bureau is a great place to network with, especially for our Kellogg Hotel and Conference Center staff, and just a lot of opportunities to get engaged in the community, volunteering as well as MSU. So that's another good thing by way of educational resource and things to have. NACUFS is very good. NACUBO, ACUHO-I, lots of associations for the service industry that we're in are also excellent to join and to participate in. So lots of opportunities. And Benny certainly encourages that. And his philosophy is to certainly support that. I know he's been the president of ACUHO-I and served there for many, many years. And a good thing to be involved with. I also was involved in Big Ten Travel Association and groups like that. So it's a great networking opportunities and money saving opportunities too, because when the entire Big Ten gets together and networks and joins our buying power for leverage, we're able to negotiate really good deals, like with National Car Rental, for example. So through that synergy, it's really helpful for both Big Ten and for our jobs here in SLE.
Mhm. Thank you, Bob. Do you have any books that you would recommend? Any type of resources that you would share with the with those that are watching?
Yeah, I'm not a voracious reader. I'm kind of a news hound and I keep up on current events and things like that a lot. But certainly, the most important book in my life is the Bible and my Christian faith. So it's God's word, and I take it as kind of an owner's manual for how to live your life, and a lot of good things I get from that that also helps me with my leadership and work here. Certainly one of the things from Matthew 7 is the golden rule that I try to espouse with leadership. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. And just by using the golden rule at work is a good place to start, and a good way to start just by using some of the teachings there, and also from the book of Proverbs for work ethic. Whoever works his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense.
Mhm.
So a lot of good common sense things I pick up from the book of Proverbs and my faith that actually helped me quite a bit. One book that I picked up way back in the 80s that I really, really enjoyed. It's simple, it's a quick read. The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. It's a really
Mhm.
thin book, a really quick read, and it's had lots of things that have helped me out for a long, long time. Every single day I come to work, and on my little yellow sticky pad, I put little square boxes of things that I'm going to accomplish today. And I
Mhm.
put 5 or 6 of them down with meetings I have to attend, things I need to get done. And I put in 1 minute a list of things I need to get done today on that little checkbox. And so I try to live one day at a time and get those functions done as well as I can day by day. The 1 minute manager also says if you are supervising other people, give them a 1 minute praise and tell them they're doing a good job if they have. If you're having difficulties, have an offline conversation on a 1 minute reprimand if needed for staff. And in 1 minute, you can accomplish a lot of these things. And it's a very helpful book for there on kind of keeping things simple and yet prioritizing the most important things to do. Glenn Klein used to tell me, a bit extreme, but his example was put one thing down today at the top of your checklist that if you don't get this done, you're going to get fired at 5 o'clock. And
Mm,
a bit extreme, and it certainly wasn't true, but Glenn put that down on himself as a challenge to get this one thing accomplished today.
mhm,
And so he made that his goal. And certainly Glenn never had any repercussions if he didn't, but it was a motivational thing for him out of the guise of the 1 minute manager to get that done. So that was very helpful for him. Another book then he had us read just recently is by Charles Duhigg. It's Super Communicators.
That's a good
And
one.
yep. And I will take screenshots of these and put it out as a PDF that Chelsea will put out a little bit later, as well as 1 minute manager, and put that out on the link for this recording so you can see what books these are and pick them up. It's terrific because communication in any area that you're at here at Michigan State is super important, whether it's written, verbal, nonverbal communication. I can't overemphasize enough the ability to effectively communicate, be transparent, and make sure that everybody is on the same page with what you're trying to accomplish. And Super Communicators is a good book for that and helps to clarify a lot of those points. So those are two books in particular that I find pretty helpful in the workplace.
Those are great suggestions, Bob. I think even like you said, prioritizing, and I really appreciate the fact that he said at least one thing, right? Because a lot of times we have to put out a lot of fires, right? And things kind of come our way, but it still allows us to focus on the most important thing. So that's a great strategy. And yeah, I would definitely support the Super Communicators book. It'll allow you to be really reflective too on your communication style, what you need from communication, things like that. That's awesome. Um, are there other pieces of advice you'd like to offer those who'd like to grow and develop and be promoted in SLE and beyond?
Yeah, since I'm meeting with just our SLE family today, I just want to encourage you. This is a great place at a great time. There is just a tremendous amount of opportunity here. In my lifetime, I have never seen a job market that is so strong right now in the United States for different positions, for promotions and moving around. Again, back in my formative years in the 70s and 80s with our big cyclic recessions we had here in Michigan, jobs were hard to come by and there was lots of layoffs and recessions. Now, I've never seen coming out of post-COVID a stronger job market and economy. As a lot of us boomers age out and head for the exits of retirement, there is tremendous amount of positions open within SLE at Michigan State, and this is a golden opportunity to look around for advancement within SLE to broaden your experiences. And I encourage you to not only within your departments, but within SLE to take a look and see what's available. It is a tremendous opportunity, especially if you like our mission of delivering outstanding Spartan experiences and serving our students, customers, and guests. If you enjoy that mission, if you enjoy working with people here at Michigan State, SLE is a tremendous opportunity and you get to work directly and envision that success. So it's super important to embrace that mission and look for opportunities here in SLE. With lots of people retiring, moving on, it is very rare to see such a robust job environment across the country with unemployment rates at like 4.3%, unheard of back in the 70s and things like that. Michigan unemployment was routinely at 10%. In the Great Recession, it was even higher than that with bankruptcies and layoffs, and now is a really good opportunity vocationally, not only to work in SLE, but at Michigan State with lots and lots of openings. So the timing is good, the opportunities are there, and I encourage everybody to seek perhaps promotions, to seek different opportunities within their own areas as they grow, and certainly as other people move around or, like me, head to retirement. So I just cannot encourage enough the timing of this right now and what an amazing time it is. And, being in Michigan, it's going to be a cyclical economy. We're going to have ups and downs again. And I guarantee you, we're going to have another tough recession coming up at some point, and the job market will not be as good and unemployment will be higher again. And so you have to take advantage of the opportunities when the job market is good. And so many out there, and SLE is a great place to work, and especially if you enjoy serving and being in the industry that we're at.
Thanks, Bob. And you've said a lot earlier as well as far as being a sponge, watching those that you want to emulate, those you may not want to emulate, being a part of nonprofits, building your network. So, yeah, you've given us a lot of tips throughout this entire interview. We appreciate it. I have not seen any questions come up in the chat. Amanda Jones is also a Sexton grad, so there was a shout out there, Bob. So let's see, is there anything else that you would like to share with our SLE team as we begin to wrap up, I think, Bob?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Kelly, just being a sponge and being able to look around you in your environment for, tips and things like that on leadership. So, of course, I had a car with a cracked windshield. So early Saturday morning, I was over at Safelite on Pennsylvania Avenue, sitting in the waiting room while they replaced my windshield. And of
Been
course,
there.
I've never seen a windshield replaced before. So it's like, can I watch? And they said, yeah, we'll have to charge you more if you watch, but you can. So I said, okay. So I go in the service bay, and there's this most wonderful giant banner hanging on the wall of Safelite. And I'll put this out there for a PDF as well. You probably can't see it too good here, but here was a giant banner in the service bay of Safelite. And this is absolutely one of the most remarkable leadership and employee guides I've ever seen in my life. And I will read it to you because it doesn't come across too well on the screen now, but I'll get that out there in PDF. So, on this giant banner, and I just stared at it, and I said to the Safelite tech, is it okay if I take a picture of this? He goes, I don't care.
Yeah.
10 things that take zero talent, but will get you 100% respect. This applies to everybody. As I watched the presidential debate the other night, aghast at many of the comments and things, all the way down to somebody who works at McDonald's like I used to. 10 things. 1, being on time. 2, work ethic. 3, effort. 4, your body language. 5, energy. 6, attitude. 7, passion. 8, being coachable. 9, doing extra. 10, being prepared. And no matter what your job is in SLE or anywhere, if you do these 10 things, it doesn't cost you a dime to do these. It doesn't take any talent at all, but it will get you 100% respect. And you will, I guarantee you, advance in your careers and be star employees for SLE like you already are. And that is one thing that I try to share with my staff. I share this with my kids too. And I just thought that was a tremendous little banner there at Safelite. So you pick up things in the different places and weird things like that. Of course, also, I learned different sayings and euphemisms from some of my mentors back when I was at St. Lawrence Hospital. My boss at the time, the chief operating officer, said everybody's job description is the same. Make your boss look good. That was it. That's all I said. Goes, because if you make your boss look good, he'll take care of you, or she'll take care of you, or they will take care of you. And
Mhm.
everybody's job description is the same, no matter what you do. If you make your boss look good, you will advance, you'll be taken care of, and you'll have many, many opportunities. So I always remember that. And also, our football coach, George Perlis, and I tell my kids this, George's famous saying as our football coach was, work hard, keep your mouth shut, and good things will happen. Simple as that. And it's true. In 42 years of working, if you do those things, opportunities will abound. I have never asked for one pay raise in my life, not one. And yet, all of my supervisors keep coming to me and giving me pay raises. And I've never asked for a promotion once, and yet I have opportunities for promotions. But if you do some of these things, the doors will open, the opportunities will come, and the blessings will flow after that. Starts though with good attitude and the things, good attitudes at work, and also being receptive to being coaching and being a good communicator and doing your job. So it's not that
Mhm.
difficult, doesn't take a lot of talent, but everybody's able to be successful and move on just by espousing some of those sayings that I have. And I tell my kids that all the time.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it takes or not, but at least I told them.
You plant seeds, just
That's
as
right.
you've done today,
We
Bob.
try.
So
Yeah.
we appreciate that. And certainly you've made your boss look good. Benny really respects the work that you do and what you've given to the division. And I think we've all heard and have seen, some of us have seen the evidence of what was on that banner from you, Bob. So thank you for your service to HFS, RHS, and now SLE, and to the institution. You've been in, like you said, pathology and in the travel office. So you've given a lot to MSU and clearly the Lansing area. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, being willing to do this, and to share your wisdom and knowledge and experience with us. It's been extremely valuable. Hopefully, the folks online with us and those that'll watch this once we post the recording will benefit a lot from it. So, thank you so much, Bob. We really appreciate your time.
Yep. And if you have any follow-up questions and things, let me know. I'm always around, or at least for a couple more weeks. And send an email, and I'll be happy to get back with you. So,
Sounds
Kelly,
good.
Kathy, Chelsea, thank you so much for your time. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.